everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nessa, I'm a fantasy writer, and today is kind of a huge filming day for me before I leave on vacation and maybe change my mind about this whole YouTube thing. In today's video, I'm going to share my current outlining process that I've been tweaking for years after watching YouTube videos or reading about other people's outlining process and trying them out for myself. So if you're not fully satisfied with your current outline, I invite you to try this one. Just remember that every story is different, every writer is different, so don't make yourself stick to the outline if it does not work for you or if it keeps you from actually writing. I've used this method to revise my first book since I realized that I needed a complete rewrite and I was not sure where to start with the revision. So I started with this outline to give myself a direction and a plan for the revision. And I just love how it gives me like landmarks to reach, but I still have a lot of freedom to come up with what happens between those landmarks, which is the most important part for me because when I start drafting, I usually get more exciting ideas that will completely derail the outline, and then I just decide to ditch the outline, and then I end up not finishing my draft because I have no idea how I'm gonna end the book because I don't have an outline. But with this method, I have the freedom to wander and explore and set things on fire in my path, but still with a reminder at the back of my head that this is where the story is supposed to go next. But let's see, every book is different and maybe it might not work with this one. I might start drafting and realize that this is not the story I want to write anymore, and then I ditch the outline. Gotta love the process. End of the disclaimer, let's start. So what I use to outline is this online tool called Miro. You can also reproduce this on the wall with post-its if you want, but the main goal is to plot out all the beats that are in Save the Cat. And what I like to add to this is I would know approximately how many chapters do I need per beat based on the word count that I strive for in my first draft. Because then I would know how many chapters I have to write, and then I can have some kind of motivational countdown when I start drafting. But you don't have to do that if it blocks your freedom or creativity, because I know that the concept of chapters and word count is gonna change in future drafts. But my main goal with this outline is just to get me through my first draft. I don't know about you, but drafting is my least favorite part of every project. I really prefer revising, and so I will take all the motivation countdowns and the quick wins and the positivity passes. So this is what my Miro board looks like. I've listed all the Save the Cat beats, and I added one little row where I specify how many chapters I need for this specific beat. I grouped some beats together so it's more seamless and it's not really like one chapter equals a beat. Let's remember that this outline is really for the first draft. Things will move later on, and that's a problem for revising Nessa. So we can start, let's see, for the first part, this is Act 1. So Act 1, I like to start my first chapters with like a vivid image at the beginning that introduces the main character and something very specific about the world that makes the story unique. I think that's really what grabs agents or a reader. First, you gotta make them care about your protagonist, and second, it's to make sure your story stands out in a way from the first scene. So whether it's a setting or like a myth that the character has heard since they were a child. And then theme stated, I like the theme to really be anchored in the character arcs, and the way I do that is I really focus on their misbelief. Hey, editing Nessa here. I realized that I did not explain what is a misbelief, so let's dive into that. A misbelief is a notion that the character has always believed to be true, either about themselves or about the world, and this truth is going to be challenged throughout the story and later on destroyed at the end as they overcome all their inner battles and find the real truth, which is also usually the main theme of the story. And what makes for a compelling, character-driven story is that every decision that the protagonist is gonna make is either driven or tainted by this misbelief. So let's look at some example of misbelief. So the first one, we have Katniss in the Hunger Games. Her misbelief is that the only way to care for someone is to be their shield. And this is mostly what drives her to volunteer to take Prim's place in the reaping. And we can see the same thing in The Little Mermaid. Ariel believes that she has to change who she is to be loved, so she literally trades her voice and who she is to become human. And then we have in Finding Nemo, Nemo's father believes that control means safety, which plays a big role with the theme of the story. He's been overprotecting his son his entire life, but when the worst happens and he loses Nemo, the story keeps pushing him into situations where control is impossible. Also a disclaimer that the example I'm using here are for stories with a positive character arc, which means that the protagonist starts with a problem and resolves it or overcomes it at the end of the book. There are other kinds of character arc where the character doesn't really fix their problems but drowns in them, or where the book ends with a tragedy. And in those cases, what happens in some of these beats is going to be very different. Also, I was thinking that maybe I should make another video with a full example that uses this outline for a popular book or movie. So let me know if you'd be interested in seeing that. Okay, back to filming, Nessa. Next is the setup. For the setup, that's where I like to explore a bit more of the character backstory and to really ground the reader into the world. The catalyst is what will break the protagonist's status quo. Something happens here that is too unsettling to ignore, and in the debate section, the protagonist is going to find every means possible to either live with it, ignore it, move on. But more and more things are going to be shaken by the catalyst in this debate section until the protagonist will be forced to do something about it. And this something won't usually be a foolproof plan. It will be a choice they make based on their misbelief. So when I'm brainstorming a new story and I want to make sure it is compelling and character driven, I usually go back to these questions about my protagonist. So the first one is, what misbelief do they cling to? What shakes up their world, which would be the catalyst? How do they react to this catalyst? And this reaction must be misbelief driven. And finally, how does the story keep showing them that they're wrong? So let's go over this question for the 3 examples that we covered earlier. So for the first question, what is her misbelief? Katniss believes that the only way to care for someone is to be their shield. What is the catalyst that will shake up her world? It's when her little sister Prim gets chosen for the Hunger Games. How does Katniss react to this catalyst? Well, Katniss immediately volunteers, not because she believes she can win, but because she cannot let Prim go through it, since her misbelief tells her that caring means taking the pain for someone else no matter the cost. How does the story keep showing them that they're wrong? Well, throughout the games, Katniss is constantly forced into situations where she cannot be the shield at all times. She cannot protect Rue. She has to rely on Pita. She realizes that caring isn't just self-sacrifice, it's trust, connection, grief. This also plays a major role at the end of the story when she comes to the realization that caring isn't about shielding someone from pain, but to face it together. Next, for the second example, what is Ariel's misbelief? Well, Ariel believes that she has to change who she is to be loved. What is the event that shakes up her world? It's when she first meets Prince Eric and falls in love with him. How does she react to that? She's ready to trade her voice and literally her identity because she thinks that being human is the only way to earn his love. And then, as the story unfolds, it's clear that losing her voice doesn't get her any closer to love. It just gets her closer to losing herself. She only gets the happy ending she wanted all along when she fully embraces who she truly is. And then, for Nemo's father, his misbelief is that control means safety. What's something that happened that shakes up his whole world is when Nemo gets taken by a diver right in front of him, and his immediate reaction is that he goes on a rescue mission, he plans for it, and he micromanages everyone and everything along the way because he thinks control is the only way to prevent more loss. But every step of the plot, from meeting Dory, who cannot follow a plan, to all the unpredictable chaos in the ocean, forces him to let go of control until he finally realizes that trusting others is the only way forward. And that's the theme. Trust means safety. Back to Miro. About the break into two, this is where the character makes a choice, and it's usually where I try to make the scene, or let's say the plot, happen in a different location. So here we are really moving from whatever state we were in Act 1, we are completely moving to a different location in Act 2. And that's where the fun and games start. It's because you're either discovering a new world, a forbidden place, In the B-story section, I would try to introduce an important ally or a new love interest or a side character that is going to join the protagonist on their journey. In Finding Nemo, this is where Nemo is at the dentist office and meets all these other fish in the aquarium in this strange new world. Then for the fun and games, that's where the protagonist explores this new world with their plan in mind. They'll maybe start enjoying themselves a little too much, maybe they'll catch feelings for their love interest, but they still have a clear goal to fix their problem. It's just that this plan, since it's based on their misbelief, it will 100% fail. They just don't know it yet. So this is the feel-good chapters where they just bask in this new world and have fun. And then you just pull out the rug from under them in the midpoint. I used to have 2 chapters for the midpoint because I love to have the big plot twist happen at the end of a chapter. So I would have a chapter that builds the tension up, and then plot twist. And then the aftermath will be in the second chapter. For this one, make sure that the midpoint is not just some random plot twist. Make it important for the character's journey to really come and poke at their misbelief. Reveal something that might leave a crack on the surface of everything they ever thought they knew. And then right after the midpoint, they must feel ready to switch gears and shift their mentality and come up with a new plan. Then we have the bad guys closing. This is the start of the Act 2 Part 2, my very worst part of any drafting stages. This is usually where you add more challenges in your protagonist's path. They're about to get caught, they're being chased out of town, the antagonist has arrived at the castle. This is where you try to pile up all the tension you can until the worst happens, or they think the worst happened. They either get betrayed, or they lose an ally or a loved one. They realize that the item they made this whole dangerous journey for has already been stolen. It feels like all is lost and they will fall down into the dark night of the soul. For Break into 3, that's usually when either our character comes with a new plan, or they figure out a new plan, or there's a secret ally, a secret weapon. They get some new information that will give them an idea on how to fix things. That's the Break into 3. It's just one chapter because it's really when they get the idea and you really show the character emotional shift here. Then for the climax, I saw once an article that split this part into multiple sections and I really liked that. Wait, I can actually try to find it. So yeah, I found this article where they actually split the different section of the climax and I liked it a lot. So there was a part where you gather the team for the new plan, you execute the plan, and then the high tower surprise is like the real climax. It's the big plot twist at the very end that shakes everything about the character. Then the dig deep down is that the character is gonna have to dig deep down and reevaluate all that they've learned and realize that misbelief they had at the beginning must be challenged and destroyed so they can find happiness. And yeah, the last one is execution of the new plan. So they are strong enough now, they've built up the courage to do it. I did not make it on purpose, but you see they have 5 sections and you have 5 chapters. So, and the last chapter of the book is the final image. It's after the big battle, all is well now. You can even add an epilogue or end the story on a cliffhanger for the next book, or even end the book with a tragedy and a bloodbath and everyone dies. It really depends on the tone and the feeling you want to leave your readers with at the end of the story. As long as your character's arc has been resolved at the end of the climax section in a satisfying way, anything goes really for the last chapter. And that's going to be it for now. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I could add a lot more disclaimers throughout the video, but the main takeaway is that this is my current outlining process and I use it mainly to make my first drafts less messy. So I try to really grasp the character's arc early on because I find it easier to then develop the plot around a character rather than to build a character around an existing plot. And if you've been told in the past that your protagonist is too passive or that the plot seems to be dragging them along, maybe go back to the questions we covered in this video to really make sure that it's the character that drives the plot and not the other way around. If you'd like more resources on what is a misbelief and a link to that beat sheet article, I'll link them all down below. And I love talking about craft and writing process, so I would love to hear about yours in the comments. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time. Bye bye!